It's Dean Treadway, and we're here at the last day of the film festival, the 2015 Atlanta Film Festival, that is. And I'm up here on the stage of the Highland Inn Ballroom with my good friends, filmmaker Jef Bredemeier, right? And Dante Stephenson, the incredibly legendary owner of Dante's Down the Hatch, which is also the name of Jeff's new documentary that's about to drop in a couple hours as a world premiere here at the film festival. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and so forth. And I am really thrilled about the movie. I want to ask Jef the first question, which is, what was the first moment that you knew you wanted to make a movie about this place? And then you can sort of dovetail it in with this question to you. What did you think when he said he wanted to make a movie?
Well, I had been working there for 13 years.
Right.
And you kind of
12 years too long.
Yes, usually. You have that mentality that Dante's is always going to be around because employees would come back 10 years after their work, grab a drink and just visit. And so you don't really have that end game in mind. But when the taxes and issues with the property came up, that made it into the paper, and that kind of stirred everything up. And when Dante, called a meeting and brought us all in, he had told us that the restaurant would be closing, and it was shocked.
7 months.
7 months.
7 months
before.
at that point.
Yeah.
Now, I should let people know, in case you don't know what Dante's Down the Hatch is, if you're not an Atlantan. If you're an Atlantan, you totally know, because it was around for about 43 years. Is that right?
43.
And had to close down for reasons we'll discuss, and it's discussed in the film. But it was an Atlanta institution, and so how did you feel when he said he wanted to make a movie? I mean, you're not being a moviegoer very much.
Well, I am, but never have the time. It sounded very quackish to me. But we all knew that Jef was a very talented guy, and we knew that he had attended the school next door with another guy that has worked for us. And I was so busy with the close down that I literally said, go with it, do what you want to do. And then he did a lot of weird things, some of which you'll see in the movie.
I don't know if I formally asked him until I was already doing it.
You probably.
It was just...
Did you show it
Go
footage,
for it.
or did you say, well, look, I'm getting this footage,
No,
whatever?
it was a long time before I saw footage. Wasn't
Really?
It? Yeah.
Well, I had done some test stuff, and, when it's something of this nature where this is half his life, this is the biggest chunk of what's important to him, I wanted to show him, because when you have a subject like that, you want to feel what it's going to be like. So I did show him some test footage, but this was after a couple of interviews of us talking.
I see, in your home, right?
Yeah, I considered it my home, yeah.
Yeah.
And he did some strange things that you don't see in movies, which you'll see in the movie. I couldn't figure out what he was doing.
Well, like
I
what? I mean, what struck you as strange?
What do you call those lights?
Well, it's light photography.
Light photography.
Oh, the light photography,
Yeah.
where it's...
I thought he was casting some sort of a witchly spell on the place. Because he'd run around with these lights after we were closed.
Right.
And everybody else would kind of stare at him, what's he up to? And little did we know that was part, I didn't know it was part of the movie.
Yeah, it was like an extended exposure.
Yeah,
So in the movie you
But
get
very
these,
effective.
Yeah, it's beautiful actually. In the movie you get the sort of paths of light, kind of showing you the path that you guys took
Well,
every day.
they were probably done with love because he'd worked for us for so long. He was probably our best waiter, and he was very good at training and very good at demanding competence and honesty and integrity among the staff members. He was outspoken. He was the kind of employee you want to have, even though deep down inside he's very obnoxious.
What's the most obnoxious thing?
I could make a list. I've got pages.
I got a little bit of Dante in me.
Let's save that
speak my mind.
for another interview. Trash interview too.
Okay, so just for the audience here, even though it's discussed in the movie a little bit, we won't go too much into it, but you started the business 43 years ago, And it was a nautically themed restaurant. Why
Well,
did
that's
you choose that?
complex, and I'll try and make it as quick. You got 3 or 4 days?
Well, we got a lot of
Okay, all right.
Not that much there.
As people ask me the question, I've thought about it a lot, and there is a plan. There is a master plan that I became a part of, not my master plan. Number one, I'm a skier, and I was in the military, and I took leave overseas and skied in Switzerland and Austria. That was my first experience with fondue. There were no fondue restaurants at the time in the USA, and the intimacy of fondue attracted me. It also helped me get dates, and it gives you something to talk about if you don't know what to talk about. So that's where that started. At the time, I was running a factory in Atlanta making shoes for the poor. The band that I worked for was having trouble raising money, and we were having trouble getting paid by the inexpensive stores that would sell these shoes. These were shoes that were copies of the more expensive loafers, but they were made with a plastic compound, so that they never burned out. You had to throw them away, and they were inexpensive. Things took a turn to the worst. He wasn't paying his bank loan off, and I sensed that he might not make it. I didn't tell him this, but I began snooping around. Well, a friend of mine lured me to St. Petersburg, Florida, where the Bounty used to be parked.
Right, and there's an old prison old prisons.
Well, I went aboard it and fell in love with it. And I said, you know, I could build a fondue restaurant in the Bounty. That crossed my mind right then and there. End of story. Back to Atlanta, back to the factory. And then Underground Atlanta was starting up. I was active in the Atlanta Sea Club, and I remember one of my female friends in the club took me to Underground Atlanta. There was maybe 1 or 2 places open and 8 or 9 places under reconstruction.
What year is this?
69, 68, 69.
So this is kind of the height of Underground Atlanta. And
No, not yet. No, the height hit in 70.
Yeah?
Yeah, hit in 70. There were not many places open. There were places being built. Well,
Okay.
I put myself to school as a carpenter and carpenter's helper and labor and so forth. So, and my father was a carpenter by hobby, even though he was a musician. So I had the skills, and I said, I might want to open a fondue restaurant. But let's make it different. Let's have live jazz. Well, I had a Playboy key. Do you remember the keys? I never used it because I didn't have any money. I was still paying off my college. But when you bought a key, it started out in Illinois, and I'm a Chicagoan, it allowed you to go and get a discount or pay very little to get in the door. But I never used it. So here I'm in Atlanta with a Playboy key, thinking about a restaurant now, and a theme, and I had seen the Paul Mitchell Trio play at X, Y, and Z, and they were playing, they were the living room band.
They were the house band.
They were the house band for many years.
Before the Playboy Club.
They left
in
Playboy.
Atlanta.
They left Playboy to come to work for me. Well, I became, because of my musical background, I became enamored with Paul's understanding of jazz and Paul's personality and the quality of the music played by these 3 musicians who came to me and were with me till they one by one passed away. Paul is the last one. Alan the Murphys just passed away last year, I believe it is.
Right.
So,
and he's shown in the movie singing and so forth.
All of a sudden, it's beginning to fall together. The scene in St. Petersburg of the intimacy of a pirate ship, the reality of live music and fondue. Now, my initial stockholders that I approached said, "You're nuts.
Yeah.
You're bringing together 3 things that won't fit."
What'd they say when you said you wanted to bring the alligator in and put them in?
That came crocodiles.
Crocodiles.
Did not have an alligator permit. I had a crocodile permit.
Is the alligator permit much more difficult?
No, it's easier. It's easier. Yeah. And alligators are indigenous to this country. Crocodiles are not, although they appear from time to time. So. And I'm very child-oriented. My parents taught little kids. So I've been around little kids all my life, and I wanted to have a restaurant that was child-friendly as well, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it had the unique blend of being sort of a night spot.
We were a nightclub.
A big time. but also a place that you could conceivably take kids.
Well,
to.
Fondue
And
is
that's
the same
like-
time.
It's very
yeah,
intimate.
like they'd be going on.
The kids
across the way from
participate.
each other.
Yeah.
The kids participate with the parents or the grandparents in a fondue situation, so it's good for maturing children.
Right.
And my mother, being a little tiny kid teacher, I've been around little kids all my life, and my mother brought to this country a chest from Denmark. She was Danish. That was from the 1600s.
Uh-huh.
And when I moved to Buckhead from underground, I put that chest in with gifts because I had a very awkward experience myself
Right.
at age 5 or 6. But to make a long story short, we became child friendly.
Yeah.
And I was able, as a Montessori child, my mother
Yeah.
a Montessori teacher, I was able to go to the tables and meet everybody. And after a little bit of conversation, is your child in a Montessori school? Yeah, how'd you know? I said, they act different.
Right.
And I know that because I'm part of it. Okay.
Right.
So the ingredients fell together. I had very talented Bill Barnes who helped do the original place for music in underground. Get the name of it. Wits End Players. The Wits End
Oh, yeah,
Players
Wits
performed
End
there.
Players.
All right.
Right.
Their designer was and Bob Griggs. They both passed away now. They came to help me do my place because I couldn't do it alone. But I had a basement that was a burial site during the Civil War, so we had a historic place.
Right.
And we took advantage of that, and people who've been there will never forget it. So that's a long answer to your question, and I don't know where to go from here, except I had worked as a dishwasher most of my life.
I think that we can see where everything
It's very complex.
came together. It seems like the most fun job in the world, but it also seemed incredibly demanding.
Busy nights, intimate coordination with the crew. You can talk about that a little bit when I get to it.
That's what's another thing that's interesting about the movie.
Nobody
by the
left
way.
us. They all
It's-
worked forever.
Yeah. Well, nobody. Yeah. It's a movie.
It's called profit sharing.
As I said, right? Okay, I didn't know that there was profit
A lot of
sharing.
it. A lot of it.
Okay, but also the loyalty comes from the way the place is run and how you treat the employees. And what's interesting about one of the things that's interesting about the movie, as I said in my review, was that it's kind of like a roadmap into how to run a business.
Completely.
I'll add
like
one
that.
caveat here. We had a profit sharing for employees who left on good terms if they'd been with us 3 or more years.
Okay.
So you've been with me 3 or more years, and you left because you got your master's degree or PhD or want to move away, and you had a great record, you get a going away bonus. I don't know another restaurant in the world that does that. So we
That's
did different things. We had about-
And there was
But
plenty
it's
of those.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Of course.
And there's like several reasons that it came from the top and trickled down to where, the team that Dante chose, managers, had the waiters, and then the bussers worked for the waiters. So there was these sections that everybody worked for
and
each
all
other.
the managers started as dishwashers, except one, and we had to fire him.
Was that
Little message
just
there.
a rule that you said?
Oh yeah,
was-
because I started as a
you
dishwasher.
wanted them to. Okay.
And the beauty,
What's
it's,
what's the benefit of starting as a dishwasher?
you get the shittiest job.
Uh-huh.
I
So
should
you-
use a different word maybe, but
No,
that's
shitty's
okay.
fine.
But I spent my childhood and grade school and high school and college and grad school life washing dishes, so I was the best dishwasher in the world. And it's a humble thing. We had standbys, for example. We always had people, mostly students,
Uh-huh.
and you had 1 or 2 nights a week. You were a standby. That meant if somebody was genuinely sick, you would come in and work. Well,
Okay.
so you're the most senior waiter, and the dishwasher's sick. Well, Jeff had washed dishes when he came to work for me.
Right.
But it was very good for the morale of the others to see the senior waiter washing dishes on a busy Saturday night when he thought he had a date. Well, it was his standby night. So the camaraderie came from my military background. I was
I
a
see.
very close-knit unit.
That explains
We
a lot.
pulled
And as you
together.
come up in the ranks, you have sympathy for the
Yes.
people
and,
below you.
and empathy.
And
Yeah.
right, you have that,
So-
but plus you have the respect of
yeah.
Well, you'd get a laugh. If
Well,
Jeff
right.
had to wash dishes in our last year, the entire staff would be back there at the end of the evening with their arms on each other singing for him because he had such a tough job to do for a change.
Yeah.
So it had a very positive effect.
And you can't complain to anybody above you.
Right.
Because they were in your exact position and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
for 4 or 5 months later, depending on how
Yeah,
fast you can.
that's
And on
unique.
busy
it
nights-
eliminates all that
On
stuff.
busy nights, the dishwashers, 2 or 3 of them, might be way behind. The staff who'd all wash this for after they'd clocked out would come back and help without anybody saying anything. So
Maybe 7 people in there.
we had 71 employees in Buckhead, and when you have that many employees, there has to be an intense rapport between them because it's a tough, highest turnover of any business are restaurants,
Of
and
course.
even higher are entertainment clubs. 19
Yeah.
out of 20 restaurants don't make it to year 5, and 39 out of 40 entertainment clubs don't make it to year 3. That's a federal statistic from the National Restaurant
Yes.
Association. We lasted 43 years. Why? We did it right.
Right. Okay, so fondue. You got cheese. You got
Beef, pork, shrimp,
Yeah, but
Well, there's the 3:
There's
the
the
cheese
3.
fondue,
the beef
the
fondue,
oil fondue.
oil fondue
and the
chocolate
chocolate
chip.
fondue.
and the chocolate. Right. I don't know. Is fondue something that's still? I mean, it's such a. To me, fondue feels like almost. And I'm not saying this in a bad way about Dante's as an institution, but fondue to me will always scream the 70s.
It is the 70s, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when it all started here.
And do you have any kind of line out there or idea out there if fondue still exists as an idea?
We have there's a franchise, and there's 2 of them in Atlanta right now.
Uh-huh.
I've chosen not to go to either one because I've heard that they aren't as good as we, and I have no reason to. But have you been to one of them?
No.
But I've heard some
I
good
had
things
enough
about them.
fondue
I've heard good
past
things
13
about
years.
it's
No more fondue for you.
It's
Yeah,
a
my fair
intimate.
share.
We probably win the award for most engagements because fondue is very intimate.
Yes.
And if you want to get engaged, what better
Or
place than when you're
proposals,
eating
yeah.
out of your proposals?
Yeah.
Eating out of the same
And
pot.
there's a harmony that is in Dante's to where fondue was a trend, So now it is a novelty, So when you get together for a fondue party, it might be cheesy, But at Dante's, you had, all these other elements that you're focused on, and then fondue.
Our beef
happened
came
to
from
be
Australia, for example. Best beef in the world.
Right.
on the
Oh,
side.
Wow.
So it wasn't
Everything was authentic.
a fondue restaurant. People didn't go there just for that. They went there for the music, for fondue,
Right.
for the ambiance,
Right.
for the romance, for the dim lights and the structure.
Uh-huh.
And we did it right. It was simple pot. It wasn't over the top. All the colors. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was just classy.
Let's talk some jazz.
Love it.
What is it that appeals? Why does jazz appeal to you so?
Well, and I say classical jazz. If you listen to WABE late at night.
Yeah. So we're not talking about fusion. Or
No,
something
no,
like that.
the real jazz.
Yeah.
Paul Mitchell, who had a master's degree, who taught at Georgia State, among other schools, played a kind of jazz that would appeal to a person like myself with a classical background, classical music background.
So how would you say classical music?
Yeah.
But like in the great names of jazz,
We
like
as-
Thelonious Monk and Art Blakey and
All the big names heard about us, and when they did a concert in town, they stopped by. Ramsey Lewis, probably the most,
Ramsey Lewis Trio.
and then he invited us to his club in Chicago. So Paul had been around so long that they all wanted to see him. Freddie Cole, who's I think briefly in the movie. Freddie is the brother of Nat King Cole.
That's
Many
right.
people don't know him, but he sings like Nat, sound the same, but he plays the piano and Nat didn't. And no, Nat.
Nat played the piano.
Well, not as well. Yeah. Freddie's a
Freddie
better
would like
piano-
that.
yeah. Nat did play the piano, come to think of it. But Nat was much better looking. So Nat was the famous member. And there's a daughter or a sister in the family too, who's also in jazz.
Well, it's Natalie Cole.
But yeah, that's a daughter of somebody. I don't
Natalie
think it's-
Cole is
yeah, I
Nat
don't-
King Cole's daughter.
Oh, it's an Nasta. Okay.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was, once you've been in business for over 5 years, the word gets out of the music company. If you're ever in Atlanta doing a gig, go to Dante's and meet these guys who've been there forever. So we didn't ask for these people to come in. They'd pop in unannounced. And it was wonderful because most of them would sit in. And for me, a musician by birth, that was very exciting to meet these names that I've never even thought of before, much less thought I might meet.
Atlanta doesn't seem to be much. I mean, am I wrong to say that Atlanta doesn't seem to be as much of a jazz town as it was back then?
Now it's not
Now?
much.
Yeah.
Now it isn't. But jazz comes and goes. I mean, and it's not New Orleans jazz. We played intellectual jazz. What would you call it?
that
Yeah.
they refer to as
Our
straight ahead
jazz
Straight ahead
appealed
jazz.
to educated people.
Yes.
Sometimes a very uneducated person would come in and be very confused.
I mean, what about
Nothing.
would a bebop kind of sound be out of
He
place?
can do
there?
that.
Yeah, but
Paul had the
it was more of
the
a
ability to play
not a
anything.
smooth jazz like Al Di Meola or anything
No.
like that, but a real
And Alan
smart,
Murphy sang
Yeah.
and has a voice that we will never forget.
Yeah.
And the three of them could sing together, and then Paul's wife sang.
Yeah.
One of the problems of celebrities popping in places is people hoarding them for autographs.
And that didn't happen at your place.
No, because we would ask them at the door.
And plus, you had little alcoves
yeah,
too,
we had
where
little
you
cabins,
could sort
yeah.
of the captain's cabin where you could
If they
sort of
wanted to be
put the-
alone with their family or their friend, a staff member would stand by there, or I'd stand by the door and prep them. And then later on, yes, Ralph will sign some autographs, but wait till he's ready to leave.
Yeah.
I remember a situation where as Dave Justice, the baseball player,
Uh-huh.
was getting ready to put his fondue fork in his mouth with food on it, some elderly redneck woman from some small town in Georgia put her napkin from, here, sign this. And
Ah.
he looked at her as if to say, are you nuts? And I won't tell you what happened afterwards, but
Uh-huh.
we watched over the celebrities that came in, which they appreciated. They
And
got
you would come and
recognized.
talk to them and
Yeah,
so
I would
forth?
always meet them first and ask them how much privacy they wanted, because
Uh-huh.
sometimes there's two of them that want to discuss business. Others want to be seen.
And you were just telling me about the whole when John Travolta came in, and since you're don't have a lot of time to watch movies, not that you don't.
I
like
didn't
movies,
recognize him, yeah.
But you didn't. Did you find that that was the case with a lot of celebrities, where maybe you're just so wrapped up in the running of the restaurant that you really didn't know who they were, so you were able to be very real with them, and I'm sure they
Fortunately, we had
appreciated
300
that.
seats in Buckhead, 200 in Underground. Fortunately, when somebody of note was in, I was told at some point. Then I would introduce myself and say, by the way, I'm the owner. I have a background in showbiz, not as good as yours. But if somebody wants your autograph, how do you want me to handle it? So all of a sudden, they felt protected,
That's good.
and they deserve it.
Yeah.
They deserve it. Some like to flirt with the crowd, some don't.
Right. But yeah.
But it was fun.
A lot of times they
It
don't
was
have the
fun.
power to.
Well, you
do
waited
that,
on
but-
celebrities. Was it fun waiting on them, or were they a pain?
I mean, and that's the thing. Same thing with him. He goes up to tables and talks to them
All
every
the tables.
single night.
Yeah.
You know, so when a celebrity would come in, it's another table.
Uh-huh.
You know, and you get used to just seeing thousands of faces.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in the environment that really set you apart.
That great actor who was with the Wits End Players, who's now doing movies. Does that help me with that name? It'll come to me afterwards. But interesting story. He had a reservation. He was doing a show in Atlanta, and it was a Saturday night. We were busy. There was a line going up the steps. It was Underground Atlanta, and he was 40 minutes late. We'd given up his table. We hold tables 10 minutes,
Right.
20 if they call us. And I was horrified because this guy was really well known, and was he going to stamp off and badmouth us in the press? So I apologized, and I told him our rules, and he stood in line with the people in line. This is Underground, and on his way out, he pulled me aside. He says, "Thanks for treating me like a human being. I had a lot of fun talking to the customers in line." I would get feedback like that often enough to know that he will tell his friends, "You want to go to a neat place in Atlanta? Go to
That's
Dante's."
probably how the.
Yeah. Oh, it's word of mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
All been word
Yeah.
of mouth.
I
Yeah.
don't think any place in town had as many celebrities pop in as we did.
Do you think also with Dante's as a restaurant, do you have? Well, my impression is that there was no Atlanta that hadn't gone to Dante's, and it was.
You
Well,
would
we've been
get very
closed now.
surprised
Yeah.
if they hadn't.
We
Yeah.
closed in July of 13. It's now 15. I still get 2 or 3 calls a day, and on weekends 6 or 7 calls. Can I make a reservation? The word we thought was out. It's not out. Of
Uh-huh.
course, people coming from out of town. So a lot of people
are still.
think we're open.
So
Now there's a 22-story condo on our site.
I hate it.
Tragedy.
So now we cut to today. A couple of hours. You're finally going to see the film. This will be your first glimpse of the film from beginning to end.
I've seen it once.
Yeah,
No,
but
if
you've
you're
already
in it,
seen
you
it.
got to see it
Right
beforehand.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
so
on the big screen it'll be different
Yeah.
with an
Yeah.
audience.
I've been in tears once, so I'll be in tears again.
You were talking about like your feeling of being sort of depressed about it, but
Well, 43 years of my life is no more.
Uh-huh.
And that place was my creation.
But you deserve a rest.
Navy SEALs don't sleep.
Now you can concentrate on other things. You must
Well,
have other
I won't go into the detail. About
you
12.
must have hobbies.
Yeah, I got more hobbies than I have time for. If you saw where I lived, you'd see it. That's my problem. I got a lot of stuff to get rid of.
Where you live is
You want to buy some
extraordinary.
glasses from down there? We still got boxes and boxes of glasses and napkins and
Maybe you can revive your music career. What did you play?
piano, guitar, mandolin, banjo, you name it.
It's time to get back on stage.
I'm not sure. Piano, I might do. No. No, I want to write a book. I'm a diver. I want to go diving in the Alabama River for a sunken
See,
ship.
you got
that has-
plenty
oh,
to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
give me that depressed stuff.
But I've got to get rid of
Follow-up documentary.
corporate stuff. No, but my child has been killed. That's basically what's happened.
Yeah.
I believe about the hatch as you might feel if you had a little boy of your own who got run over by a truck.
Oh hell, I feel that way about things that are close. I felt that way about Dante's. I feel that way regularly in Atlanta because I feel like for some reason, and maybe this is because Atlanta is a relatively new city, meaning that it was burned down 100 years
Yeah.
ago, and it keeps changing and morphing into something else. But I hate seeing things like Dante's and we could have lost the Fox back in that.
I was
back
part
in
of the group that raised the
75.
money for that. Yeah.
But things are always going by the wayside that I hate. Even things like Varsity Junior and stuff like that. I think that is in this town. I mean,
This is a right to work state, which is very important. There is no forced unionization. If the union came in, as they've tried, we'd run them off.
yeah,
There was a bit of a mob here. I mean, I had a lot of trouble in the beginning with the topless and bottomless people that wanted to get down in underground Atlanta.
oh yeah,
And I've had threats in my life that I had to deal with back then because I was president of the merchants then and I led the fight, which the press is very cooperative on, to keep them out.
yeah.
There's no place for them down there. It was a family place back then. Now it's not the same.
Yeah, I mean, my mom tells me about underground Atlanta going into like a very, very seedy.
It's not so much
Time.
seedy as it is common.
she was-
It's not unique anymore.
Right. Okay.
They filled in merchants that could have been in some other
Well, that's
area.
I definitely feel that way about underground Atlanta now.
There was
I don't
what,
feel
7
that
or 8
it's
different
special.
kinds of music in underground in the early days. 7 or 8 different types of music.
Isn't that
So
amazing?
you could find anything, and the food was excellent. The restaurants got great reviews. I don't even know if there's a restaurant other than Sandwich Shop open in underground now.
You need to have like a good group of solid establishments, restaurants or nightclubs, that it being a destination place that you can go and have options.
Yeah.
And it really fills it up. It brings life to the streets because
Yeah.
that's the best part of the cobblestones. You need to feel that buzz in the air.
Yeah.
And once you have, so many places closed, there was a time period where Dante's was the only one open for a stint, and it just lulled the whole place.
Mm-hmm.
We had trouble with kids and drugs too. Remember when the drinking age went from 21 to 18? That was the biggest mistake that Governor Carter did. I love Jimmy Carter, but that was a mistake. The teachers
That
and
caused a lot of
coaches.
trouble.
Well, your chemistry, body chemistry, is not ready to drink at 18 or under. It is ready to drink at 21. So when the coat and tie law was rescinded and the drinking age was increased, that's when underground started to collapse because the farmers would come into town in their farming uniforms or garb and get into fights at bars that never had fights before. But if they were wearing their one suit after 8 o'clock with a tie, their wife would beat them up because that was the church suit.
Yes.
So it's some sociology mixed in here. When the underground reopened, we reopened at the request of the mayor because of the Olympics. But it was not the same then, and it's not the same now. It can be revived, and there are people working on it right now. Our place is still there, intact.
What did you keep out of the restaurant in your house?
In bucket or underground?
Well,
More than I should have.
Yeah?
How do you answer that?
Well, what's your favorite? I mean,
Things that I
when
won't
I
part
ask
with?
you that question, what would be the one object that
Well-
would be like, oh, I can't, no way.
The steamer trunk that my mother came from Denmark to this country with in the 1920s.
So you made that part of the restaurant.
Yes,
Oh,
that's
wow.
where the children's gifts were kept.
Sure.
So when she passed away, I got it.
And
There were 6 of us, and I didn't care. And I've got to back up and tell you a short story. Parents don't like to take their children with them to restaurants when they're really little because they're noisy and screaming, so they give them these computers now today to do it. Well, I wanted to be child friendly. So that chest became something special. I, at age 5, went out with my parents to eat. I wanted to stay home and play with my toys. But we went out twice a year. First place was the Kungsholm, a Swedish smorgasbord restaurant in Chicago. I loved it because you could choose what you wanted, and I was a finicky eater.
Right.
The second place was a snotty French restaurant called, I'll think of it, doesn't matter what it's called, it's not there anymore. I walked in the door having had the tie tied by my mother, tighter so that I couldn't breathe.
Right.
And the waiters and bussers were in tuxedos. And it was French. Arrogance. I didn't want to be there. I was 5 or 6. And I moped to the table. Then I looked back at the door and there was these 2 big cardboard boxes. One said boys, one said girls. I said, Mom, what's that? She says, why don't you ask the waiter? She wanted me to learn. Well, here comes this arrogant Frenchman in a tuxedo. And I raised my hand. Yes. I'm practically shivering at the table. What's your name? What did I do wrong? It was immediately what I thought. Pulls out this piece of paper. Yes? Why do you have those boxes at the front door? Young man, you are going to be graded tonight by me and the busman. Your table manners and your eating etiquette. And if you get a high enough grade, you get a present on the way home. And boy, did I straighten up in a hurry. Remember that first time you slouched straight up? I will never forget that. That's why I did it, and it works. We were voted by Child Magazine as one of the 12 places in the nation to bring mature children. Child-friendly jazz club. Doesn't make sense, does it?
It's so wild.
And I love the kids. The kids they're so much more honest when they're children.
Yeah.
So, I got 1,000 stories.
I know you do. And I know we could be here for a long time, but I know you have the film coming up. And one thing I do want to ask you about the film, it's very unusual to see a movie programmed twice next to each other. Why did that happen at this film festival? Explain that process.
That was a shock.
A positive show.
This is my first film, and getting into the festival was
Already
a shock.
Right.
That was quite an honor. And then when tickets went on sale, it sold out in 5 days. And
They were going to
This
be in
is
the
the
smaller theater.
downstairs. This is the downstairs theater. The
Yeah.
340.
It was going to be in a smaller theater. When that happened, they moved it to the current theater.
Yeah.
then after that, they added an encore show, and
That's,
that sold out right before the festival started. And that's just a testament to, like, this is a city that loves Dante's Down the Hatch. You know, so this subject matter comes out, and it's, you know, filmed here in Atlanta, about Atlanta, and it's already got a crowd that's just embedded into it.
Plus, all of our employees, foreign that live in Atlanta, are probably all coming.
Yeah, employees, local customers.
They want to see the
from
movie
years.
because they're in it. People like to see movies that they might be in.
So you expect to see tears in the crowd?
If I could see through my tears, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to take one's life, half of one's life, and all of a sudden it isn't there anymore. He's done a lot to rebolster me. It's pretty damn
And
depressing.
each individual, you know, like he was talking about the longevity, you know, this restaurant there was a time where it had the record in the country for the turnover rate. So people are here for decades. That's normal. And when
They stay because they can't get a job elsewhere.
well, that's true.
You ruined them.
Bunch of degenerates. So
No, they come back.
that's a
because
huge part of your life.
This is a
And
family.
You're quite invested. So when that just ends, it's raw, and you just walk out the door, and you know there needed to be some sense of closure, and I believe this film is.
Should you tell the story about when I sat the group down when it was had to announce that we were going to close and what was going to happen? If the audience want to hear that story.
The
bonus?
employees?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking about that earlier, in which it was just a complete shock to everybody. You know, to where
When
you
the
just
word
expect
got
it.
out, did we cover that already? Everybody
Well,
who
we cover-
stayed till the last day got a full year's severance.
Oh,
Unheard
yes.
of. Yeah, okay.
Unheard of.
And now we're sending out bonuses to people who worked for us in the 70s because we have our own internal Hall of Fame.
Uh-huh.
Halls of Fames are very important to people.
Yeah.
If they've worked for us 3 years or longer and all the managers voted hooray, they're going to get a surprise check. I'm already receiving answers back from some of these shocked people who we've managed to keep up with through Facebook and other things like that.
And it stays connected.
It's a family. We're a family.
Yes.
Not a restaurant. We're a family.
I do have to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to let you go. But
This has been fun. We can sit here all day.
yeah, absolutely. What's going to happen with the film once it's done tonight? And, like, are you submitting it to other festivals, or
Yes.
what's going on?
And you know, like I said, this is my first film, so it's all new to me. I'm just getting through this week, through the showing.
And you're a painter. He's a painter, but you're a
Yeah.
painter by trade, right?
Yeah, painter, photographer.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of leached into this area.
Right.
So yeah, submit to other festivals, see how it does. It's a very pertinent story to Atlanta, but I think it has a universal, truth.
It absolutely does.
And especially a learning tool for others creating a business and seeing what's possible.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. I love that part of it. That's just only one of many aspects that I love about it.
Thank you.
So I congratulate you. I congratulate you too. You cut a very dignified image on screen, I think, and you're endlessly fascinating.
And there's many more stories to tell. Like we almost didn't have a home for the big 7-foot crocodile.
Yeah.
So another
So,
time.
Plenty of
Yes.
stories.
I bet you'll get asked a lot of questions.
Well, the most common question is, what do you feed them? Their alligators. I said, we don't have any alligators. We have crocodiles. Oh, that's a little kid. What do you feed the crocodiles? I said, little boys and little girls that don't eat their vegetables, don't help around the house, and sass their parents. And all of a sudden, zip, there's songs. Yes. So I had a good effect on the children.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with
Thanks,
me,
it's really
and
nice.
thank you so much for making this movie, Jeff, and for giving us 43 years.
Jeez. And I'm only 42.
Yeah, I know. Such a young buck.
Yes.
Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you. Well, for Movie Geeks United and for the Atlanta Film Festival, we're closing out here today. It's the last day. So I'm here with Jef Bredemeier and Dante Stephenson. And their movie is Dante's Down the Hatch, and I hope you have a great screen. I know it's going to be fabulous. So thank you guys for watching.